I cannot thank you enough for the love and sympathy you have shown our whole family.
King Charles just dropped a bombshell that no one saw coming. He's confirmed the existence of a fourth child, and what he revealed is absolutely devastating. This secret has been buried for over 40 years, and now the truth is finally out. Palace insiders are in complete shock. The royal family will never be the same after this. What really happened behind closed doors?
I am optimistic. I'm generally a very optimistic person.
This morning, Prince William sharing some rare personal insights.
The way Charles chose to share this information was unusual for someone in his position. Rather than issuing a formal palace statement or arranging a televised interview, he invited a small group of 5 trusted journalists to Clarence House. These were reporters who had covered the royal family for years with discretion and fairness. There were no cameras, no recording devices, just notebooks and the king's own words as he sat in his private study, surrounded by portraits of his ancestors and the weight of centuries of tradition. What Charles revealed in that room was something he described as the most difficult truth of his life. He confirmed the existence of a child born during the early 1980s, during what was perhaps the most turbulent period of his marriage to Princess Diana. This was not a child from his relationship with Camila, as some observers had speculated over the years. The truth was far more complicated, and in many ways, more heartbreaking than anyone could have imagined. The question everyone has been asking is simple: why now? At 77 years old, Charles has been dealing with health concerns that the palace has only partially disclosed to the public. According to sources close to the situation, he has been facing his own mortality in a way he never has before. This sense of urgency, combined with what he described as a moral obligation to set the record straight, played a significant role in his decision. But there were other factors at work as well. Palace insiders had been aware for several months that an investigative journalist had potentially uncovered documents that could prove the existence of this hidden child. The palace was facing a difficult choice: allow the story to be told by someone else, or take control of the narrative. Charles ultimately decided that if this truth was going to come out, it should come from him directly. The timing also coincided with a period of relative stability for the royal family. Prince William and Catherine had successfully navigated their own challenges earlier in the year, and public affection for them remained strong. Prince Harry and Meghan were living quietly in California, their previous tell-all projects seemingly behind them. The Commonwealth was preparing for a major summit in early 2026, and Charles wanted this matter addressed before such an important gathering. The reaction inside Buckingham Palace was mixed and emotional. Some longtime employees who had served the family through decades of secrets and silence were reportedly in tears. Others expressed quiet relief that the truth was finally being acknowledged. Younger members of the royal household, those who had only joined in recent years, struggled to comprehend how something this significant could have been hidden for so long. One junior staff member was heard saying that everything they thought they understood about the family had been built on shaky foundations. As news of the announcement spread beyond that small room at Clarence House, the world began to process what this meant for the monarchy, for the line of succession, and for every member of the royal family touched by this decades-old secret. The reaction was immediate and intense, with news organizations across the globe scrambling to understand the full story. The identity of this fourth child is perhaps the most poignant element of the entire revelation. Her name is Charlotte Anne, though she has never used any connection to royalty or claimed any title. She was born on March 15, 1983, in a private London clinic far from the public eye. The circumstances surrounding her birth are complex and deeply sad. Charlotte is not Charles's biological daughter. She is Diana's child from a brief relationship that occurred during a particularly painful period in the royal marriage. In early 1982, Diana was struggling enormously with the pressure of royal life. She had already given birth to William in June of the previous year, and the problems in her marriage to Charles were becoming increasingly apparent. Charles was still emotionally involved with Camilla Parker Bowles, which left Diana feeling isolated, desperately lonely, and profoundly unhappy. During a 2-month period when Charles was traveling extensively for royal duties, Diana formed a connection with someone who offered her the kindness and attention she desperately needed. The relationship was brief, but it resulted in a pregnancy that would change the course of several lives forever. Diana confided in only 2 people initially: her sister Sarah, and a trusted lady-in-waiting who has since passed away. When the pregnancy was discovered, conversations about divorce took place, but in 1982, such a scandal would have been devastating for the monarchy. The Queen Mother was still alive and wielding considerable influence, and the institution's priority was preservation at any cost. Charles learned about Diana's pregnancy in late summer of 1982. According to his recent confession, his initial reaction was one of anger and betrayal, despite his own ongoing emotional relationship with Camilla. But as the weeks passed and he witnessed Diana's anguish, something shifted within him. He made what he has described as both the most selfless and most cowardly decision of his life. He agreed to claim the child as his own if Diana would agree to give the baby up for adoption immediately after birth. The adoption was arranged through a private agency with deep connections to the Church of England. The adoptive parents were a couple in their late 30s who were unable to have children of their own. They lived in the countryside of Norfolk and were told only that the baby's mother was young and from a prominent family. Nothing more was revealed to them. They named the baby Charlotte Anne, never knowing that the middle name was Diana's desperate attempt to maintain some connection to her lost daughter. Anne was Diana's own middle name. The reasons this secret was kept for so long are numerous and complicated. The most obvious reason was the preservation of the monarchy itself. In 1983, the public image of Charles and Diana was crucial to the royal family's standing. They were supposed to represent the perfect marriage, the fairy tale that gave hope to millions. The truth about Diana's child would have shattered that image completely and potentially triggered a constitutional crisis regarding the line of succession. But there were deeper, more personal reasons for the silence as well. Diana herself demanded that the secret be kept, not out of shame, but out of a desperate desire to protect her daughter from the brutal spotlight of royal life. She had already experienced how relentlessly the press followed her every move, how every moment of her existence was analysed and criticised. She could not bear the thought of subjecting an innocent child to that same treatment, especially a child whose very existence would mark her as a scandal. Charles kept the secret initially out of duty to the crown, but over the years his reasons evolved. He grew to respect Diana's wish to protect the child, and he also carried enormous guilt about the entire situation. In his recent statement, he admitted that forcing Diana to give up her baby was something he could never forgive himself for, regardless of the circumstances that led to it. He described watching Diana's grief in the months and years that followed as one of the most painful experiences of his life. Charlotte herself grew up completely unaware of her true origins. She had what those who know her describe as a happy childhood in Norfolk. She attended local schools, lived an ordinary life, married in her 20s, had 3 children of her own, and worked as a primary school teacher. It was not until August of 2025 that she learned the truth about who she really was. King Charles's private secretary arrived at her home with documents, photographs, and a personal letter from the king himself, revealing everything. Princess Diana carried the weight of losing Charlotte Anne every single day from March 15, 1983, until her tragic death on August 31, 1997. Those 14 years were marked by a grief so profound that it touched every aspect of her life, every decision she made, and every relationship she formed. The loss of her daughter was a wound that never healed, a pain that she carried silently while the world watched her every move. The Queen was informed of the situation by Charles himself in September of 1982. According to accounts from palace insiders who were present during that period, her reaction was one of cold pragmatism mixed with disappointment. She did not express rage or openly condemn Diana, but rather immediately began calculating how to protect the monarchy from potential scandal. The Queen Mother, when she learned the truth, was far less measured in her response. She reportedly called Diana careless and foolish, though she ultimately supported the adoption plan as the only viable solution to what she saw as an impossible situation. It was Diana's conversations with a handful of trusted friends that truly revealed the depth of her heartbreak. In 1992, during the period when her marriage to Charles was publicly collapsing, Diana opened up to her voice coach, a woman who had become one of her closest confidants. She described the moment they took Charlotte away as the moment her heart stopped beating properly. She said she could still feel the weight of her daughter in her arms, still smell that unique scent of newborn skin, and still see those tiny fingers that had briefly wrapped around her own. Diana told her friend that she had wanted to name the baby Charlotte after her grandmother and Anne after her own middle name. When the adoptive parents happened to choose those exact names, Diana interpreted it as a sign that her daughter would somehow always be connected to her. She kept a small silver locket with a lock of Charlotte's hair inside, the only physical reminder she had been allowed to keep. She wore that locket hidden beneath her clothes almost every day, touching it whenever she felt overwhelmed by grief or loneliness. In 1995, Diana gave her famous interview with Martin Bashir, in which she spoke about there being 3 people in her marriage. What the world did not know was that during the preparation for that interview, Diana had seriously considered revealing the truth about Charlotte. She had even drafted sections of what she would say, how she would explain the impossible position she had been placed in as a young mother. But ultimately, her desire to protect her daughter from the inevitable media storm outweighed her need to tell her own truth. Paul Burrell, Diana's butler, later revealed that the princess kept a secret diary separate from her other journals. In this hidden diary, she wrote letters to Charlotte on every birthday and every Mother's Day. She described what William and Harry were doing, what kind of mother she was trying to be, and how she hoped that wherever Charlotte was, she was loved and happy. Diana wrote about her regrets, her endless what-ifs, and her fantasies of somehow finding her daughter and bringing her home. The loss of Charlotte fundamentally changed how Diana approached motherhood with William and Harry. She became fiercely protective of her sons, determined that they would grow up knowing love and affection even within the cold walls of palace life. She broke royal protocol constantly to hug them, kiss them, and be emotionally present in ways that previous generations of royals never had been. Friends observed that Diana seemed to be mothering 4 children, not 2, pouring all the love she could not give Charlotte into her sons. Diana's humanitarian work, particularly with children, took on new significance in light of her hidden grief. Her visits to homeless shelters, her advocacy for children affected by AIDS, her campaign against landmines that killed and maimed young people, all of it was driven in part by a mother's love that had nowhere to go. She would hold sick children with a tenderness that made nurses weep, and she would spend extra time with young people who had lost their parents, understanding the pain of separation in ways others could not. In her final years, Diana had apparently hired a private investigator to try to locate Charlotte. She did not want to disrupt her daughter's life, but she desperately wanted to know that the girl was happy, healthy, and loved. The investigator had made some progress by the summer of 1997, having narrowed the search to 3 families in Norfolk. Diana planned to wait until Charlotte was 18 before attempting any contact, believing that an adult would be better equipped to handle such shocking news. But Diana never got that chance. On that terrible night in Paris, as her car sped through the Pont de l'Alma tunnel, pursued by paparazzi, Diana was carrying that silver locket with Charlotte's hair. She was also carrying a letter she had written to her daughter, explaining everything and expressing a mother's eternal love. That letter, along with other personal effects, was initially kept by French authorities and later returned to the palace, where it remained sealed until Charles's recent decision to reveal the truth. Those closest to Diana have said that her final years were marked by a particular kind of sadness that went beyond her failed marriage or her struggles with the royal family. It was the sadness of a mother who had been forced to choose between her child and her duty and who had chosen duty. It was the grief of missing every milestone, every first word, every first step, every birthday of a daughter she loved but could not keep. The final entry in Diana's secret diary, written just days before her death, spoke of hope. She wrote that she had survived the worst thing a mother could endure, and if she could survive that, she could survive anything. She wrote about planning to find Charlotte when the time was right, about imagining a reunion that would heal them both. She wrote about believing that love, even love that had been forced into silence and separation, could never truly die. Camilla Parker Bowles, now Queen Consort, has always been portrayed as the other woman in Charles and Diana's marriage, but her role in the Charlotte situation reveals a far more complex picture. Camilla knew about Diana's pregnancy and the subsequent adoption from the very beginning, making her not just a participant in Charles's romantic betrayal, but also a keeper of one of the most significant royal secrets in modern history. Charles told Camilla about Diana's pregnancy in September of 1982, just weeks after Diana herself had confirmed the news. At that time, Camilla was still married to Andrew Parker Bowles, though their relationship had long been complicated by her ongoing connection to Charles. According to sources close to the situation, Charles drove to Camilla's home in the middle of the night, devastated and seeking counsel from the woman he truly loved. He spent hours at her kitchen table, drinking whiskey and wrestling with what to do. Camilla's initial reaction was reportedly pragmatic rather than emotional. She understood immediately that Diana's pregnancy threatened everything Charles had worked for, every sacrifice he had made in the name of duty. But those close to Camila at the time so observed something else in her response: an opportunity. If Charles could position himself as the magnanimous husband who stood by his wife despite her betrayal, he might eventually be free to pursue his relationship with Camilla more openly. It was Camilla who first suggested the adoption plan to Charles. During one of their late-night conversations, she painted a picture of how it could work. The baby would be placed with a good family. Diana would be spared public humiliation. The monarchy would be protected, and Charles would emerge as a devoted husband who had weathered an impossible situation with grace. Camilla's critics would later call this manipulation, while her defenders insisted she was simply being practical about an impossible situation. Camilla accompanied Charles to some of his meetings with palace officials as they planned the logistics of the adoption. She was never officially part of these discussions, but she would wait in adjacent rooms, available for Charles to consult when he wanted support or guidance. Some staff members found her presence inappropriate and troubling, given that she was part of the reason Diana had sought comfort elsewhere in the first place. But Charles relied on Camilla's strength during this period, and no one was willing to challenge the future king's need for her support. The influence Camilla wielded over Charles's decision-making during this time cannot be overstated. Friends of Diana later claimed that Charles might have considered other options, perhaps even accepting Charlotte as his own daughter officially, if Camilla had encouraged him to do so. But Camilla understood that accepting another man's child would be seen as weakness, not strength, and that such weakness could jeopardize Charles's position. She reinforced his belief that the adoption was not just the best solution, but the only solution. Camilla also played a role in managing Diana's emotional state during and after the pregnancy. On at least 3 occasions, she sent messages to Diana through intermediaries, offering words of support and understanding. These messages infuriated Diana, who saw them as deeply hypocritical, coming from the woman who had stolen her husband's heart. Diana reportedly tore up one of Camilla's letters without reading it fully, telling her sister that she did not need sympathy from the woman who had destroyed her marriage. When Diana learned that Camilla had known about the adoption plan from the beginning and had even helped shape it, whatever small chance existed for civility between the two women evaporated completely. Diana began to see Camilla not just as her romantic rival, but as someone who had actively participated in the most painful experience of her life. This added a new and bitter dimension to their already hostile relationship. The revelation of Charlotte Anne's existence has triggered the most significant constitutional question facing the British monarchy since the abdication crisis of 1936. While Charlotte is not Charles's biological daughter and therefore has no legal claim to the throne, the mere existence of this secret has raised profound questions about transparency, legitimacy, and the future stability of the royal succession. Prince William's position as heir to the throne remains legally secure, but the revelation has complicated his public image and his relationship with the institution he will one day lead. William learned the full truth about Charlotte only in June of 2025, when Charles summoned him to Balmoral for what the Prince of Wales initially believed would be a routine discussion about estate management. Instead, his father spent 3 hours explaining the events of 1982 and 1983, showing William documents and photographs that proved everything he was saying. William's reaction was a mixture of shock, anger, and profound sadness for his mother. According to sources close to the prince, he spent several days processing the information before he could even speak to Catherine about it. When he finally did share the truth with his wife, they both wept for Diana and for the half-sister William had never known existed. William's first instinct was to meet Charlotte immediately, to establish a relationship with this woman who shared his mother's blood. But palace advisors cautioned against moving too quickly, concerned about how such a meeting might be perceived publicly and whether Charlotte herself was ready for such contact. The revelation has also forced William to reconsider everything he thought he knew about his parents' marriage. He had always understood that his father's relationship with Camilla had driven his mother to unhappiness. but now he realized that the situation had been far more complex than he had been led to believe. This knowledge has created a new distance between William and Charles, with friends saying that the prince feels betrayed not just by the secret itself, but by the decades of lies that accompanied it. Prince Harry's position is perhaps even more complicated. Having already stepped back from royal duties and relocated to California with Meghan, Harry learned about Charlotte not from his father, but from news reports like everyone else. Charles had planned to tell Harry during a scheduled phone call, but the information leaked to the press before that conversation could take place. Harry was reportedly furious at being excluded from the initial disclosure, seeing it as yet another example of the palace prioritizing the institution over family relationships. Harry and Meghan released a statement through their Archewell Foundation expressing support for Charlotte and criticizing the palace for maintaining such a damaging secret for so long. Harry drew parallels between Charlotte's experience of being hidden away and his own feelings of being treated as the spare rather than the heir. Some commentators noted that Harry seemed to be using Charlotte's story to validate his own grievances against the royal family, while others felt his empathy was genuine and his criticisms valid. The legal implications for the line of succession are less dramatic than many initially feared, but still significant. Constitutional experts have confirmed that Charlotte has no claim to the throne because she is not Charles's biological daughter and was legally adopted by another family in 1983. The adoption, which was handled properly under British law, severed any legal connection Charlotte might have had to the royal family. However, the revelation has prompted calls for greater transparency about the line of succession and the rules that govern it. Parliament has begun preliminary discussions about whether new legislation is needed to prevent similar situations in the future. Some members of Parliament have suggested that all members of the royal family in direct line to the throne should be required to disclose certain personal information to a confidential parliamentary committee. Others argue that such measures would be invasive and unnecessary, given that the current situation arose from highly unusual circumstances unlikely to be repeated. The question of Charlotte's children has also emerged as a point of legal interest. Charlotte has 3 children, all now adults, who carry Diana's genetic legacy through their mother. While these individuals have no claim to titles or positions within the royal family, their existence raises questions about how far the royal bloodline extends and who should be considered part of the extended royal family. Some traditionalists argue that blood relationships matter less than legal ones, while others feel that Diana's grandchildren deserve some form of acknowledgement. The Church of England has also weighed in on the succession implications, given that the monarch serves as supreme governor of the Church. The Archbishop of Canterbury released a lengthy statement addressing the moral and theological dimensions of the situation. He emphasized forgiveness and reconciliation, while also acknowledging that institutions, including the Church, must be held accountable when they prioritize secrecy over truth. His statement was seen as a careful balancing act between supporting the monarchy and recognizing the harm caused by decades of deception. What this means for the future of the monarchy extends beyond legal questions to matters of public trust and institutional legitimacy. Opinion polls conducted in the weeks following Charles's announcement show that support for the monarchy has dropped to its lowest level in 50 years, with only 48% of Britons expressing support for keeping the royal family. Younger generations in particular have expressed anger at what they see as yet another example of one rule for the royals and another for everyone else. The revelation has also reignited Republican sentiment in Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. Political leaders in these regions have questioned why their constituents should continue to fund a monarchy that operates in secrecy and protects its own interests above all else. The Scottish National Party has called for a referendum on whether Scotland should maintain the monarch as head of state if the country achieves independence. In Wales, similar discussions have emerged, with some politicians arguing that the title Prince of Wales should be abolished entirely. The impact on the Commonwealth has been equally significant. Several Commonwealth nations have reopened discussions about removing the British monarch as their head of state. Jamaica and Barbados, which had already been moving in this direction, have accelerated their plans. Australia has seen a resurgence in Republican sentiment, with polls showing that support for retaining the monarchy has dropped significantly since the Charlotte revelation became public. The younger members of the royal family have found themselves in particularly difficult positions. William and Catherine understand that they represent the future of the monarchy, and the pressure on them to restore public confidence has intensified. They have increased their public engagements and have been careful to project an image of transparency and modernity. Catherine in particular has been praised for her handling of the situation, offering support to both her husband and expressing sympathy for Charlotte's position without criticizing the decisions made decades ago. Princess Anne, the king's sister, has reportedly been deeply troubled by the revelation. Known for her no-nonsense approach and dedication to duty, she has struggled to reconcile her brother's actions with her own strict moral code. She has continued her royal duties without public comment, but those close to her say she is profoundly disappointed in how the situation was handled and believes the secrecy has damaged the institution she has spent her life serving. The financial implications for the monarchy are also becoming clear. There have been renewed calls to reduce the sovereign grant, the annual payment from the government to support the royal family's official duties. Some members of parliament have argued that if the royal family cannot be trusted to operate with transparency, they should not receive public funding at the current levels. The debate over royal finances, always contentious, has taken on new urgency in light of the Charlotte scandal. The succession crisis triggered by Charlotte's revelation is not about who will be king or queen. Those questions remain settled. Instead, it is a crisis of confidence, a moment when the British people are asking themselves whether an institution built on tradition and secrecy can adapt to an age that demands transparency and accountability. How the royal family answers that question will determine whether the monarchy survives into the next century or becomes a relic of a bygone era that could not adapt to modern expectations. King Charles's decision to reveal the truth about Charlotte Anne in October of 2025 was not, as he initially claimed, purely a matter of conscience and faith. While those factors certainly played a role, the reality was far more complex and driven by circumstances that had been building for months. The king found himself caught between the weight of his own mortality, the threat of exposure by outside forces, and a genuine desire to make amends for one of the greatest regrets of his life. Understanding why he chose this particular moment requires looking at the convergence of personal, political, and practical pressures that left him with limited options. The king's health had been deteriorating throughout 2025, though the palace had been careful to present his condition as manageable and nothing to cause alarm. In reality, Charles had been diagnosed with a serious illness in March of that year, one that his doctors had told him would likely give him another 5 to 7 years if managed properly. The diagnosis forced Charles to confront his own mortality in a way he never had before. He began to think seriously about his legacy and about what truths would emerge after his death if he did not control them while he still could. Charles had multiple private conversations with the Archbishop of Canterbury throughout the spring and summer of 2025. These discussions went far beyond the usual relationship between monarch and religious leader. Charles spoke openly about his guilt over Charlotte, about the choices he had made in his youth, and about his fear that he would die without ever making things right. The Archbishop encouraged Charles to consider revelation not as a religious obligation, but as a path to genuine healing for everyone involved, including Charlotte herself. But the catalyst that ultimately forced Charles's hand was the discovery that a journalist had obtained documents proving Charlotte's existence. In August of 2025, Palace Security Services learned that an investigative reporter had somehow accessed sealed adoption records from the 1980s. The journalist had not yet published anything, but palace officials knew it was only a matter of time. Charles faced a choice: let the story be told by someone else, or tell it himself on his own terms. The decision, when it came down to it, was not really a decision at all. Charles spent weeks preparing for the announcement, working with a small team of advisors to craft his statement and anticipate every possible reaction. He insisted on telling William and Catherine first, despite the painful conversation he knew it would be. He wanted to tell Harry in person as well, but his younger son's schedule and the geographical distance made that impossible within the time frame they had. Charles has privately expressed deep regret about how Harry learned the news, understanding that it has further damaged their already fragile relationship. The public's reaction to the news has been unprecedented in its intensity and scope. Within hours of the first reports breaking, social media platforms were overwhelmed with commentary, speculation, and debate. Hashtags related to Charlotte and Diana trended worldwide for days. News networks devoted entire programs to analyzing every aspect of the story, bringing in experts on royal history, adoption law, and family psychology. The story dominated headlines not just in Britain, but across the Commonwealth and around the world. Public opinion has been deeply divided. One segment of the population has expressed sympathy for Charles, viewing him as a young man who made difficult choices under impossible circumstances. These defenders point out that he was only 34 years old in 1982, under enormous pressure from his family and the institution, and genuinely trying to protect both Diana and the monarchy. They argue that judging his actions by contemporary standards ignores the very different social context of the early 1980s, when divorce was far more stigmatized and the monarchy operated under much stricter conventions. But a larger portion of the public has reacted with anger and disgust. Many see Charles's actions as unforgivable, particularly his role in forcing Diana to give up her baby. These critics argue that Charles prioritized the monarchy's image over his wife's well-being and a child's right to know her mother. They point out that Charles's relationship with Camilla was the root cause of Diana's unhappiness, and that his moral authority to judge Diana's brief relationship was non-existent. Social media has been filled with calls for Charles to abdicate in favor of William, though constitutional experts have explained that such a move would be extraordinarily difficult and potentially destabilizing. Diana's legacy has experienced a remarkable resurgence in the wake of these revelations. Memorials and tributes to the late princess have appeared spontaneously outside Kensington Palace, Buckingham Palace, and at the site of her grave at Althorpe. Many of the mourners are young people who were not even born when Diana died, but who have been moved by the story of her forced separation from Charlotte. Diana is being recast in public memory not just as a humanitarian and style icon, but as a victim of an institution that valued its own preservation above all else. Charlotte herself has become the focus of intense media attention, though she has remained largely silent since learning the truth. She released one brief statement through a lawyer saying that she needed time to process this information and requesting privacy for herself and her family. Paparazzi have camped outside her Norfolk home, and tabloids have offered substantial sums for exclusive interviews. So far, Charlotte has refused all media requests, though sources close to her suggest that she may eventually share her story when she feels ready. The emotional toll on Charlotte cannot be overstated. She spent 42 years believing she knew who she was, only to discover that her entire identity was built on incomplete information. She has had to grapple with the knowledge that her birth mother was one of the most famous women in the world, that she has two half-brothers who are senior members of the royal family, and that her existence was considered such a threat to the monarchy that it had to be hidden away. Friends of Charlotte have described her as intelligent, kind, and deeply private, someone who never sought attention or fame and who is now thrust into a spotlight she never wanted. The question of what happens next for the royal family is one that keeps palace advisors working late into the night. William and Charles meet regularly, but their conversations are reportedly tense and formal. The easy relationship they once shared has been strained by the weight of this revelation. Harry has not spoken to his father since the news broke and has given no indication that he plans to in the near future. The distance between Harry and the rest of the family, which had been slowly improving, has widened once again. Taryn has taken on the role of family mediator, trying to maintain relationships between various family members while also protecting her own children from the fallout. Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis are old enough to understand that something significant has happened, though the full details have been kept from them for now. Catherine and William are determined to shield their children from the worst of the public scrutiny while also preparing them for the reality that their family's history is more complicated than they had been taught. Plans are underway for Charlotte to meet her half-brothers, though the timing remains uncertain. William has expressed a strong desire to establish a relationship with Charlotte and to ensure that she feels welcomed into the family if she wishes. Harry has sent messages through intermediaries expressing similar sentiments, though his physical distance from the UK complicates any potential meeting. But Charlotte herself has been cautious, understandably overwhelmed by the sudden transformation of her entire identity, and uncertain whether she wants to become part of a family that chose to give her away. Camilla's position has become increasingly precarious in the aftermath of the revelation. Her involvement in the original decision and her decades of silence have made her a target of public anger. Opinion polls show that her favorability ratings, which had been slowly improving over the years, have plummeted. There have been protests outside Clarence House, with demonstrators carrying signs demanding accountability. Some political commentators have suggested that Camilla should step back from public duties, at least temporarily, to allow the situation to calm down. The monarchy's future hangs in a balance it has not experienced since the death of Diana in 1997. Charles's decision to reveal the truth about Charlotte may have been the right moral choice, but it has also exposed the institution's vulnerabilities in ways that critics can exploit. Republican movements across the Commonwealth have seized on the scandal as proof that hereditary monarchy is fundamentally incompatible with modern values of honesty and accountability. Yet there are also signs that the monarchy might survive this crisis, as it has survived so many others. The British people have a complicated relationship with their royal family, capable of harsh criticism one moment and fierce loyalty the next. William and Catherine's popularity remains strong, and many see them as representing a more modern, transparent version of royalty that could restore public faith. The question is whether the damage caused by Charlotte's revelation can be contained before it becomes irreparable. In the end, Charles's decision to speak now was both courageous and self-serving, honest and calculating, redemptive and destructive. It was the act of a man trying to make peace with his past before time runs out, but also the desperate move of a king, trying to control a narrative that was about to spiral beyond his control. History will judge whether he made the right choice, but for now, the royal family must navigate the consequences of a secret that should never have been kept for so long.